What's going on, everybody? Anon here. And I know it's only been 6 days since we've looked at booster box prices, but supply and quantity of supply is down across the board in the last week or so, and prices have ticked up. So I figured it's a good time to talk through this and add a journey together to the chart, and it also gives us a second data point for Prismatic Evolutions that supports what I've been saying about, at least with the ETBs, the set have bottoming. But before we start, I do want to mention I did a video early today on 151 and Blooming Waters, and it's supposed to release this Friday, February 7th, through LGS or through distribution to LGS. And we found out today that the four majors are all cutting back on wave one, if you will. So instead of releasing all of the allocation that we've already received, it looks like we're going to be haircut and get the balance of it at a later date. And the way it was explained to us, and this is from multiple distributions or distributors, was that they just didn't get the product. So it'll be interesting to see. My guess is it's probably going to turbocharge the booster bundle prices, the pack prices, and 151 is just going to continue on its trajectory. But getting back into the booster boxes here, and again, this is just for Scarlet and Violet. So SV base is up at 144, up from 141 last week. And more importantly, if we look here, the quantity ticked up a little bit last week, but now it's down at 197. So, with days of inventory, you still have about 17.9 days. And I know one of the points of feedback from the last video was, how do we manage how much supply has come into the market? And as of right now, you really can't, unless you're looking at it, perpetually. We can really only tell what the sales are and what's coming out of the market, the sales price. But we're working on something in and on the back end, that we'll probably have live in a couple weeks from now. It'll be a big day once we have it running. But anyway, Paldea Evolved, firmly over $200 now for the first time. Was 191 last week, 203 this week. Not a whole lot of boxes before we get to 210, 215. So up $38 in the last month. More importantly, the supply in the market is down to 139. So again, 16% decline from a month ago, 9.3 days of inventory. The sales have been around 15, a little bit stronger than what we've seen in the past. So Paldea Evolved it's going to leak out because there is a bunch of it out there being held by some of the larger sellers, but it'll start to leak to the market as we get over $200 here. Obsidian Flames up at 180. This thing has just gone absolutely nutty in the last month, where we're sitting at 125, 135. And next thing you know, it's like, boom, 180. And then you look at volume. There's still a good amount of volume, the most across all the booster boxes, except for, surging at 175. 10 a day, among the weaker selling sets of 17 and a half days of inventory. Quite honestly, it looks like everybody's just pulled back. And there's no race to the bottom. So everybody's just set a price and said, you know what, it's going to sell eventually. And if it doesn't sell, it's going to go up tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So there's really no pressure to sell. Paradox Rift, this is interesting. So I have this one marked in green. And the reason I have it marked in green is, it's only up $1, but the volume, the supply in the market has gone from 205 to 138. And with the 138 supply in the market, we're only a handful of boxes from this set being at 165. And quite honestly, it should probably be 165, 175 right now. The cards in the set are moving, the Groudon's moving, so it shouldn't be where it's at. I think it's a pretty good buy from a value perspective right now. So, $13 a day, 10.6 days in supply and inventory. Temporal, 169. So this is up. The reason I have it in yellow is it's still available at Pokemon Center. There's a ton of it. Now we're only showing 74 boxes in stock here. But that's certainly not the case, since you can buy it at Pokemon Center for MSRP. So again, yellow here for the days of inventory, because in my mind, it's not super relevant here because there is a ceiling on the price. So moving on to Twilight. Again, this is super interesting because even though the price is down a tick, we look at the quantity of inventory, 134 down to 84. And this has actually been selling pretty strong at 21 boxes a day. So there's only 4 days of inventory out there. So I'm sure more products are going to leak out. But this is the one that, in my view, can go parabolic here relatively quickly. especially with limited new supply coming to the market. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Stellar, 156. We're up at 165, 165, 170, depending on the day and what way the wind's blowing. 150 boxes on the market. So 19 boxes selling a day, 7.9 days of inventory. So not a whole heck of a lot there either. Surging Sparks, really no move in the box prices. Now it does look, it's been sitting around 250 for a while. Looks like we're starting to dry up. So we're probably going to take another leg up here in the next, at some point this week, probably 255 to 265. Still a good amount of volume on the market, which is super interesting because there haven't been booster boxes. So, not quite sure if this is just folks who bought at 150, 180, they're looking to sell product, or, there's just a magical cache of this sitting out there. 33 boxes a day. This is down from 40. So the attention on this set is really starting to take a little bit of a dip here. So, 7.4 days of inventory. Moving on to Journey Together, 194.80, 426 boxes, which is completely misleading because a lot of the big stores, pre-sellers, they're using Pro, so they're only listing 4 or 5 boxes at a time, and they're just pumping it in the market. And 50 sales a day, which is nuts. So, the thing that's interesting about Journey Together, which I didn't talk that much about with Prismatic Evolutions because the MSRP price was so much lower than where it's at. If we look at the scalping part of this market, and people buy Journey Together from, call it Walmart, right? So they're paying $161 at MSRP plus 6% sales tax. So just call it $170 all in, just for rounding. If they wanted to sell the box on TCG Player, 14% rip, and then call it $10 to ship, you might be able to get away with 7 or 8, depending on if it's a closed seller, or, if you're sending it across the country, it's probably closer to $12 to $14. But the break even at MSRP, factoring all of those multipliers in, it's like $215, $212, something like that. So the fact that this box right now is selling at $194.80, people will not be able to flip the product that they're buying at MSRP and make money on it on TCG Player eBay. Now, if they were to sell it on Facebook, yeah, sure. But still, ultimately, if they're paying $170 and $10 to ship, you're at $180. You're really going to sell it and make $15? Maybe, I guess. But I think at this purchase price, we're not going to have the downward pressure of dumping that we had with Prismatic Evolutions, because people were buying at $50, $55. You tack on, call it $8 to ship. So now you're 50, 58, another 6%, so another 3. So 61 all in, and then another 14%. So call it 9. So $70 total cost. If you can sell it for 100 to 120, most people are going to take a 50% margin. But to get anywhere close to them on Journey Together, the boxes are going to have to be at like $300. So we're not going to see the same headwinds with Journey Together when it comes out that we saw with Prismatic Evolutions, exactly for that reason. And then again, 50 selling a day, it's going to be a healthy set. And as I mentioned, and I know I got a lot of skeptical feedback from some of the PokeTubers until they saw their own allocation. It's pretty abysmal, and it's pretty abysmal because there's a much wider net of people who have accounts with distribution. They haven't dabbled in the Pokemon space forever, and they're like, you know what? Let me get a couple of cases. And it doesn't take too many of those until all of a sudden it's got to come out of somewhere. So, it doesn't matter if you've been spending the same amount for the last 15 years. Ultimately, you're going to have to pay the price. And that's why, it's kind of a shame, but a lot of folks get comfortable with 1 or 2 distributors. And when times get tight like this, you get squeezed because you're not diversified across distribution, because traditionally you don't really have to be, if you will. You have these massive spikes where, it pays to be diversified, and other times it just doesn't matter. So, I don't want to say it's a matter of being lazy or comfortable, but it pays to have more irons in the fire, provided that you can direct spend across the board. If you don't have enough spend uh, to keep all of the distribution accounts healthy, then of course it's not going to help you. So anyway, moving to the ETBs. So 151. Again, I mentioned that earlier in the video, from 173 up to 180. By the way, here's my little doc spun or whatever that went absolutely crazy over the weekend. SIR, 1 in 540 packs that everybody's forgotten about. It's and there's never been a whole lot of it on the market. 40, 50 copies. It's a cool card. Whether it's good or not, I don't know, but it looks yummy and it's cute. So 151, supply's up a little bit, which you would expect. Not a whole lot selling each day. Probably in Fates, same thing. We're up a couple bucks. Inventory's up. 11 per day. Moving to Shrouded. This is where it gets interesting. So it looks like everybody across the board just repriced this at $50 and said, you know what? It'll sell when it sells. If not, F off. You have Houndoom, Persian, both cards pushing $100. PSA 10, I think 3+ something like that. And then you look at the quantity. The quantity of Shrouded Fable a month ago was like 2,200 ETBs. And that's not even the cases. These are just loose ETBs. And now you're down at 823. So the quantity is finally starting to erode. And, you're only selling 15 a day. So there's 55 days of inventory. So there's still a ton of this out there. So at this $50 price point, there's probably not a whole lot of upside from here until time passes. And then Prismatic. And this is where I want to spend a bunch of time. So I've mentioned multiple times that this is in a bottoming process. And, one of the big impacts of the set was there was a lot of product that went out through big box stores at MSRP, and a lot of folks who, scalping, botting, whatever adjective you want to use, or means of acquisition, they have product and they have a quick flip, quick profit if they want to sell it. And, there is a ton of, there's 12,000 units that have sold already. The set's been out for 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. It's absolutely insane. So we finally worked through a lot of the volume. So the price is finally, I think it hit a low of like 102, maybe even 100 on TCG Player. So we're back up at 114 today. But more importantly, a week ago there was 1,667, and yes, it was 2,667. Trading Card World had 1,000 listed. Now they have 2,000 listed, but the price point's $150 per. I can't imagine they're going to dump it at this point because they know what they have. So let's just put a pin in that and say, hey, look, there's going to be a little bit of churning at $150 for a while when it gets to that point. So I pulled it out just for comparison's sake. So, you have 1,667 a week ago. Today you have 1,167. So you're down 500, almost a third. And, you're selling 285 a day. Now it's going to tick down a little bit during the week, but on this past weekend, we hit some near-term highs in sales based on the price. So you have 4.1 days of inventory here. So I would imagine that Prismatic Evolutions is going to continue to push up. By the end of the week, I'd be shocked if it's not back at $130. And then people are starting to shake their head and say, okay, well, these ETBs are worth something. Now the packs may stagnate a little bit, but the ETBs, look at 151. There's what? 8 packs, 9 packs probably. At $10 a pack is $90. $99 at 11 a pack, but they're selling for $180 because the ETB itself has a collector value. So, I know a lot of the people who are a little naive out there saw the Pokemon company coming out and saying, we're going to reprint till we're blue in the face. It's all BS. They just told people what they want to hear. And everybody's like, oh yeah, everything's going to be fine now. And then all of a sudden, everything's short printed. So, or shouldn't say short printed. It's short printed. The supply is short relative to the current demand is probably the more appropriate way to say it. So Prismatic's going to continue to go up, and these the bundles coming out, it's all priced down. The same with the surprise boxes. I can't imagine anybody's going to open them at this point because I can only imagine how crazy the stamp promos are going to go. Those boxes are probably $200 or $300 boxes. It's crazy. And then, you have the tins. The tins themselves, who wants to open them? The tins themselves are probably 30, $40 a tin because they're cool. So there's not a whole lot of product coming out. And, then we have the EV pouch coming out. People aren't going to rip that as much. And, there's not a whole lot of value there because you have to pay an extra $25 for the pouch. And then, you come to the, what is it? The premium collection, super premium, not ultra premium. I don't know. But you have 12 packs in that, and then you have the statue collection, which I'm sure they're going to charge $40 for the statue. It'll be similar to the Charizard one, just with some better packs in. So none of these are going to dump a massive amount of product into the market. So until we get to Christmas time, when we get to the point where they're just dumping some sort of EX box with these onto the market, it's going to be nothing but tailwinds. And there's almost no risk of downside. And for those of you who say it's going back to MSRP, it's just never going to happen. Because look at these prices. You tell me which one of these sets, except for Shrouded, doesn't desperately need volume in the market. It's every single one. And the Pokemon Company can't print every single one to a volume that would adequately reprice it in the market. It's just impossible right now. And then you have Team Rocket coming out. If they're not printing the crap out of that right now and just leaving these guys kind of sit in the background, I'd be shocked, because that's really the first opportunity since surging where they've had the time in the timeline, the print timeline, to make sure that there's enough print time just to make sure that there's increased product. So generally I'd say be careful with ordering for that one, but quite honestly, the demands could be so through the roof. I don't think it even matters how much they print. It's going to be a $200 plus box. So anyway, guys, this was super important to go through. Again, the stagnation in Scarlet and Violet seems to have passed to some extent. Now we're going to get into tax season and tax refunds and more buying. This is it's kind of the tip of the iceberg in the perfect storm. So subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. We have a notification app in the Discord now, which is really cool. Just gives everybody a heads up when items are in stock at certain stores. And it's a great community. Everybody's helping each other out. We have some fun in there. So anyway, guys, have a good night and we'll talk soon.